Hello, YouTube vintage stereo collectors. I'm just trying the external mic function on this new camera I got. See if we can have a little clear audio. Want to talk about a couple things. One is that I finished the Cardon Spitfire Mark II. So, it's repainted, it's cleaned up as best as could. There's a bit of wear in this faceplate you can't really do much about, but it's a very nice unit. Yeah, I've actually, although it was hard to repair some of the things on it, give an example, like this RX light here, it actually was melted. It's a neon bulb, an NE2 bulb and resistor, and it was obviously, there would have been a little bit of a smoke show at some time. I don't know why. So what I basically did is I had a panel lamp, new old stock one, but it was a round red piece there. And what I did is I used a hot knife to cut it off because of this weird plastic, it shatters, and then actually melted it back on with the soldering iron with the window open and a little bit of glue to hold it in, hooked it up, and it already has the resistor in it. So when you key this up, the relay takes voltage off RX and puts it on TX. Breaker 19 radio check on vintage radio. Sometimes you get an answer. There's not many trucks in my neighborhood. Once in a while you'll get one. It's getting lots of skip today. Nice echo. I wonder how far away they are. Let's give it a try. Breaker 14 for radio check on vintage radio. I think they have a little more power than I do. Anyway, the other thing I wanted to talk about, actually, some of the soldering on this was fun too, but you get these, there's some ground points in this rail where there's 7, 8, 9 connections made on them. Yikes, trying to get it, take one out and put another in. I don't like doing that J hook thing, it looks ugly. There's 16 electrolytic caps in this radio, plus the 3-section can, which I restuffed. And although some of them, like this 47 microfarad 350, actually tests okay with a reasonable ESR number on it, it had leaked out a lot of goo. A lot of these had leaked goo. They're oil caps. Of this vintage, when you get into 1960s equipment that's still working and you start using it in your collection, occasionally letting it run for a while, I find it usually fails. Capacitors fail in these, resistors fail in these, almost at the same rate in many cases. There are a couple of comments on my videos about shotgunning capacitors. Well, actually, I don't shotgun them. That almost sounds reckless. Every capacitor, at whatever point it's in the circuit, I desolder it completely and test the components around it, resistors, other caps. And it allows me to go through the circuit, because some of these don't test properly in the circuit for whatever reason. It actually allows you to do a careful examination of the radio. And what I've seen on some of these, you can see where capacitors have been unsoldered, then resoldered. They've done that to check them. If you're unsoldering a almost 60-year-old capacitor, I think it's time to put a new one in there. And a lot of these, because the newer capacitors are smaller, I don't know whether they're going to last. One thing I can say is these MEIC electrolytics, that's mostly what I put in here. A few Nishikons. They come with axial leads, 105 Celsius. I've been using these since 2002. And Any that are in my collection have not broken down, and people that I sold stuff to have not come back on them. It was the right thing to do, especially with tube gear 60s and older. Now let me give you an example. I have a 1982 Realistic STA 110 that's coming on the bench next. Nice wood grain receiver, silver front. It works really good. I'm surprised. Like, it just sounds great. Needs some control cleaning, a little bit cleaning up. I'm not going to change any capacitors in that one. I can even set the bias as hardly even off. A 1982 one, unless there was an actual fault, I'm not going to be changing capacitors. But then you get into, for instance, I do a lot of late 60s, early 70s Kenwoods and Yamahas. And in every case, I hear an improvement in sound, especially if you use good quality capacitors. There's always an improvement in sound. Not always is it louder, is it bassier, but the noise floor, the amount of noise in these amps can be a problem. A combination of replacing old transistors, old resistors, and dried out capacitors, it brings those alive. You have a phono stage right now, the amp that I'm using, a KA2500, you can have the phono off, obviously. You can turn the control all the way to 10, and there's just a little bit of a hiss. Just a tiny bit of a hiss at 10. The phono is super quiet. It wasn't like that when it came to me. It was like a real crackly noise. Anyway, as far as capacitors go, you know what? Like, there's no hard and fast rule. Depends on the unit, whether you recap it. And this has caused some people, I've actually seen friendships damaged over this, whether to recap or not to recap. So I'm just saying, first of all, I'm not going to get too wound up about it. Got to watch the blood pressure, you know. All I can say is, if something is recapped with quality stuff, it sounds better. It always does. Anyway, thanks for watching and listening. See if we can get some skip on 6.